Howdy folks, AJ coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer, and today's video is going to be about the Elder Scrolls Online. The non-disclosure agreement has been lifted, and you'll excuse my cat. I have the door open because I'm expecting a package and I want to be able to hear the doorbell. So the non-disclosure agreement has been lifted, and I have been waiting for quite some time to be able to talk about this. I have some pretty strong opinions about it, both positive and negative. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to, the stuff that I don't like, the stuff that I hate, I'm going to talk about it, as well as the stuff I like and the stuff I love. So let's get started. To start off with, I believe that they had an opportunity here, the developers had an opportunity here, to make probably the most immersive MMO game world ever. They had the opportunity, and at this point, they have chosen not to go that direction. And the reason I say that is because everybody knows that the photorealistic style graphics for Elder Scrolls games is fantastic. Everybody knows that the history of the Elder Scrolls games allow you, the game mechanics allow you in the other games to interact with almost everything in the world and so forth. So they had an opportunity here to really make it feel like you were in another world. You were able to interact with everything, and to some extent they did some of that. But I'm going to go through a list here of the stuff that they did not do, which would have added to the immersiveness and made it feel much more like a real live, living world that you could go in and experience. To start off with, at least at this point, there is no underwater exploration. There's lots of bodies of water, but there's no going underwater. Can't. Even though in Skyrim you could, in Elder Scrolls Online you can't. To me, that's a huge problem. Because I'm an explorer in MMOs, and if I'm out exploring the world, just out looking and seeing what I can find, what creatures and things I'm going to run into, and if I'm going to stumble upon a cave and all these types of things. And one of those things is if I come across, I come to a shoreline and there's water and I see a wrecked ship, a shipwreck out there, kind of half submerged or whatever, I want to go out there and I want to go down and dive and see if I can find something underneath the water. And I know there's a lot of people like me that enjoy that sense of adventure to go do that. You can't do that stuff in Elder Scrolls Online, at least not at this point, unfortunately. Next, I took a couple different crafting. You can take, you can put points into all the different crafting skills that you want to, but I chose a couple that I wanted to really put points into, to try and build them up to where I could make stuff that I could use. One was what they call clothing, which is leather and cloth armor, and the other one is dealing with runes and being able to, basically, it's like enchantment, being able to enchant your weapons and armor with different runes. And one of the immersive breaking things for me is that I'm out farming for leather, hides, and so forth to make more leather armor, and I come across a nice big buck deer, full antlers, everything else like that, and I'm able to kill it. I'm able to hunt it and kill it, but I can't skin it like I would, I can't get any materials off of this beautiful deer that I just killed that should be able to be skinned and give you, however much hide or whatever you need. That just seems logical to me that you should be able to do that. If you kill certain other critters in the world, like rats and snakes and things like that, you can harvest from them. You can harvest guts and bug parts and stuff to use as fishing bait. So they have thought about being able to harvest from critters, but they won't let you harvest from deer. just one of those little things that kind of bug me. So next, getting into with still staying within the immersiveness part of the game, if you go into a tavern, and this goes all the way back to Dungeons and Dragons, paper and pencil. Everybody goes into a tavern, and they want that tavern experience where they can sit down, they can have an ale, they can swap stories, and if they're role playing, especially in an MMO, if they're role playing and they want to have a guild meeting or a group meeting, and they want to meet at the tavern, you should be able to order ale or wine or whatever, and you should be able to sit down at a table or in front of the fireplace and role play. You can't do that in the Elder Scrolls Online. You can order what they call ale, and it's buff drinks. It's buff drinks and buff food that you can order there. There are no alcohol effects whatsoever, so there is no drunken brawling. There is no drunken adventuring. If you wanted to do that with the effects of alcohol, which for role-playing purposes, if you're pretending that you're in a medieval setting of some type, you want to be able to, immerse yourself in the world and feel like you're doing all those. If you're a barbarian, fighter, dwarf, whatever, not necessarily in this game, but in any game, you want to be able to act out what a dwarf would do. A dwarf would go into a tavern and order an ale and start a fight. I mean, that's what they do. So the immersiveness there has been broken once again. Staying within the taverns, so you can't get alcohol with alcohol effects. You can't sit down to role play. But the bartender that sells you the buff food and the buff drinks, he can repair your armor somehow, as well as any vendor can pretty much repair your armor. And it's like, well, I got news for you. Bartenders don't repair armor. Okay? Armor smiths repair armor. And that would go into a whole thing about, we could get into a whole thing about player crafting and repairing should be, all interwoven. So, we won't even get into that. But, so, yes, bartenders don't repair armor. Your inventory is just your inventory. You don't have any bags, and there is no opportunity to craft bags for other players and so forth. So your inventory is your inventory. That's another immersive breaking mechanic as far as I'm concerned. So there is no pickpocketing. Again, that's immersive breaking. And there are no mailboxes. You can just, from anywhere, you can just go into your mail and you can send mail and receive mail, including items, no mailboxes. That doesn't make any sense. That's not immersive whatsoever. That's, I don't get that at all. Now, people can say I'm nitpicking, but again, if you want to be in an immersive world, these are the things that you expect. And I expect from an Elder Scrolls game, I expect more. So, now, having said all the negatives, now the immersive boosting things, the things that they did do that do add to the immersiveness of the game. The lore books throughout the world in all different places, and as you explore, you'll find them, and you can read all the lore, and they add that to a library on your character. So once you pick up the book, if you don't want to read it right that second, you don't have to. It adds it to a special section in your inventory for lore. So you can always go back and read those whenever you want to. And that, to me, seems fairly realistic. If you were out and you were somebody who wanted to collect, your character was interested in history and things and wanted to collect lore books, you would tend to pick those up and take them with you. So that seems to be logical and makes sense, and it adds a lot to the immersiveness. The other thing that they did, they added container looting. So most of the containers that you find, crates and chests and wardrobes and bookshelves and all that, are lootable. And you can find, and you frequently will find, items that will boost skills, like books. Like if you read a book about dual wielding, it will increase your dual wielding skill. And that just seems logical to me, that if you wanted to go out, if your character was to go out and say, I'm going to research things. I'm going to be a researcher. I'm going to find all the books I can and read everything I can to learn about combat, to learn about armor, making armor, and all these things. You could, and in this game you can do that. You can just go out and explore and try and do that just through finding books that increase your skills and finding lore books and stuff like that. So that's all great immersiveness stuff that they did right. The exploration in general is fantastic. You can go out and don't have to feel like you are on a rail, that you have to go a particular direction. There is main quest storylines and the side quests and all that stuff, but if you just feel like you just want to go out and explore, there are things to do. Okay, folks, I'm back. I had that package came, so I'm able to shut the door, kick the cat out, we can continue. So we were talking about exploration, and as I was saying, the exploration in the game is fantastic. So if you are one of those that just loves to go out and just explore the countryside and see what you can find and all that, this game offers quite a bit. One of the things that you'll find is treasure chests in very unusual places. You'll have to do a lot of searching and a lot of exploring, and you'll be rewarded with treasure chests. And there is a mechanic for picking the locks that at first onset seems very frustrating until you can figure it out. And I'm not going to spoil the experience for somebody to learn how to do it, but just be warned, it is frustrating when you first do it until you figure out the trick, and there is a trick to it. And then it's actually a very positive mechanic, because you feel like you're learning how to pick these locks, and so it's kind of a neat feature. I like it. The other thing that they did, which boosts immersiveness in the game, is the dialogue of the NPCs, the spoken dialogue, the atmospheric dialogue that people that are talking just as you're walking around and everything, changes as you progress through the game and storyline and everything. You'll hear the NPCs change what they're talking about. It'll change with the story of the game. So that was kind of neat too. So they did do quite a few things there to boost the immersiveness. I think that as time goes on, once the game comes out, they will hopefully, some of these things I've talked about, they'll add them in as new features and so forth, and so that's what we can hope for. There's no reason why they couldn't. So I look forward to them, seeing feedback like this from not just me, but from a lot of people, and hopefully that'll change their direction in certain things, and they'll decide to add things, and it'll be a good thing. So let's talk about combat a little bit. I love the combat in this game. I love the fact that I don't have to look down and constantly be looking at toolbars and everything like that. You only have so many attacks and you can do it right on a mouse with a couple of thumb buttons and your regular buttons, and you're good to go. You got to use a couple different keys on the keyboard, but that's very minimal, and you can block easily, you can dodge easily, you can do all these things that are intuitive in fighting. Now, having said that I love the combat, the one thing that pisses me off is that for whatever reason they won't allow you to use any skills. You can't use any skills when you're sprinting, and sprinting is limited to your stamina. It will burn through your stamina, and there are different ways throughout in the game to help with that. You can boost your stamina. You can add it to when you're making armor and things like that. There are procs that you can add to that reduce the cost of your sprinting and so forth. And it just seems to me that it would be logical, especially somebody that has say a high dexterity, to be able to sprint and do throw swing an axe or swing a sword while they're sprinting. It seems pretty logical to me. You can't tell me that if Colin Kaepernick, somebody as athletic as Colin Kaepernick, was in a medieval setting and chose to be a fighter, that he wouldn't be able to sprint and swing his sword, because we've seen what the guy can do on a football field, running around full speed and throwing a ball or change in direction or whatever, I don't see why it seems unrealistic that while you're sprinting you can't use any skills at all. It's just a pet peeve of mine. It bugs me. I think you should be able to, and I think that people would get better at it as they're sprinting and using. I mean, I think it would just add to a lot of different things. Now, how it would affect PvP, I don't know. Maybe that's why they did it. Maybe they think that it would give some people an unfair advantage in PvP. I don't know. So it's just one of those things that bugs me. The skill trees, I think, are fantastic because it allows for great individuality. You can spend skill points in multiple different ways. You can add skill points to your armor that gives you certain bonuses and things like that. You can add them to your weapon skills. You can add them to your class, your race, and so forth. And it gives you a great great possibilities for diversification in different characters. So that is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about crafting real quick. I've gotten fairly deep into crafting. And the best way to explain it is I find it to be simple yet complex. So because it is one button create things, but there are things involved in that you can customize items, and so using different styles and different types of additions, enhancements to the item that you're making. So there is quite a bit of customization that you can do. I think that there could be more, but there is quite a bit. One of the things that I don't really care for is that there, at least at this point, the only dropped recipes are for cooking, for provisioning. There are no dropped recipes for anything else, armor smithing or weapon smithing or rune crafting or anything. There are books that drop that are different styles for the race styles, and then you can't craft a different race, without finding that book and learning that style. So there is that. I mean, that adds a little bit of depth to it. But I really do think that drop recipe, and maybe that's something that they're going to add though, at some point. So I like the fact that there are procs that you can put on items, but the way that you have to learn them is you have to learn them from deconstructing, DEing an item that already has it. So if you loot a belt that has a proc on there to improve your sprinting, reduce your sprinting costs of your stamina, the only way that you can learn to do that and put that into something you're making is you have to DE that item, and then you will learn that, or you have to research it. It destroys the weapon, and it takes time to research that particular proc, and then you can add that once you start creating items. After you've done that, then you can add that to that item. So you can learn how to do those things. So that was kind of a neat thing. So it gives you an incentive to go out and find different items that have different procs so that you can DE it and research it and learn how to use it in your crafting. The crafting does get more complex later on in the game. I haven't gotten there yet, but everything that I've heard and seen, people talk about, is that it does get much more complex later on in the game. I think that material drops are kind of out of balance right now. I think that you can find ore just about anywhere. You can't go 10 feet without tripping over an ore node, but finding leather, you have to go out and hunt to get leather, and every animal you kill doesn't necessarily drop leather. So you could kill 3 or 4, whatever, bears, whatever you want to call it, and whatever they are, and one might have some leather on it, and the other 2 don't. And so it takes quite a while to get a lot of leather. Whereas if you're creating cloth armor, you use something, starting out, you use something called jute, and it's from a plant, and you can find that, just laying around. You can go find jute plants and take it. With leather, you got to kill stuff to get the leather. So, and then there's other materials in the games that I think are also out of balance. runes and so forth. Hopefully they're going to fix that, but that's for another video if we get deeper into crafting and so forth. The last thing I wanted to talk about was guilds. You can join multiple guilds. I don't know enough to say whether that's a positive. I think it's a positive or negative. I can't offer an opinion yet. The other thing that's different about this game is there is no marketplace. There's no broker. There is no auctioneer or anything. The only way that you can sell your items is they have what's called guild stores, and that is kind of like a broker, but it's only for the people in your guild. It's not for everybody on the server. So being in multiple guilds for people that want to sell their items will obviously be a good thing, because they have multiple different stores that they can sell stuff on. So those are my initial observations. I will do gameplay footage later. I wanted to get this out, and it's going to be a long video. It looks like we're over 20 minutes now. So I'm going to end it there, and you guys can look forward to some in-game footage later. So we'll catch you guys on